Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. First of all, I would like to welcome everybody to Maple Grove. It's very nice to see some familiar faces that have been to our facility before, but I see a lot of new faces that have also been, so welcome. I'm just going to go over a few small housekeeping things, as I call them, to get started, and then I'm going to turn it over to this fine-looking group to my right. So just a couple things. Usually the first thing people want to know is where's the bathroom. So we have a couple options for bathrooms right in that doorway over here. If they're coded doors, but I have a sticker on there with the code to go ahead and get in. There are single bathroom stalls, or but they're single stall ones that are in the hallway across from the conference room that have the breakfast and where the lunch will be served. There's also some restrooms back in the front lobby where you came in. So if anybody needs anything, just remember the flowers and just find the lady with the flowers. I can direct you. With that, in regards to traveling around the building today, I just would like to remind everybody I have a full house of inpatient residents, so we are providing care today, and just be mindful of that. So should you happen to need to handle business, I know I'm in a room full of people that probably do, I would ask that you not conduct it in the hallway there, to please go out to the front lobby, just because there'll be points during the day where patient care is happening in the conference room next to that. So just be mindful of that. If there's something you need, again, feel free to ask and I can hopefully assist. So what we want to get started with this morning is just bless you, bless you, is just to, in case people are wondering what Michigan Presents is, Michigan Presents is a collaborative of providers where we're committed to not only educating professionals, educating people out in the community, and collaborating with each other to connect people with services. Because even with technology, I think it's getting harder to connect people with services. And so those of us up here collaborate on a regular daily basis. You're going to be hearing from some other providers that we also collaborate with on a regular basis throughout the day. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. One of the things that is also special about this event today is that it is a fundraiser that is going to be benefiting NACOA. And Denise will be talking a little bit about NACOA and has been somebody who is just an incredible advocate to the recovery community for a long time. So my name is Steve Feldman. I'm from Feinberg Consulting. Feinberg Consulting is a company that works with individuals and families providing interventions, working and providing case management, and helping families navigate and individuals navigate through the challenges that come up with addiction and mental health and other behavioral issues. So as the day goes on, we'll all get a chance to speak a little bit more, but really, really glad to be here and thank everybody for coming.
Good morning. I'm Bruce Goldberg from Rivers Bend PC. We are outpatient mental health and substance abuse, intensive outpatient program, PHP, and 42 therapists for individual. More than about Rivers Bend though, really, thank you everyone for coming out today. The southeastern Michigan area is probably, I believe, the most collaborative community at this point in the country. And thank you guys for spending your Friday with us, and thank you for everything that all of you do to help people find resources. And thank you so much for some of our friends that have come in from out of state. So please, everyone, give yourself a hand for everything you do. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Shannon.
Hi, I'm Shannon Roselle with Newport Healthcare, and we provide residential treatment for ages 7 to 35. So we have over 600 beds across the country, unfortunately none in Michigan yet, but I'll be talking a little bit more on the levels of care panel about some of the challenges with putting children and minors in residential care out of state. Typically, Leah Bogdansky is the Michigan rep, and she is currently on her maternity leave, and we're going to be happy to welcome her back on December 22nd. With that,
Thanks so much, Shannon. So that is the one thing I forgot.
They have pizza in the cafe today.
Okay, there you go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Denise Burtneff, and I have the honor of being the CEO at NACOA, the National Association for Children and Families that are impacted by the disease of addiction. I also have the luxury of living here in Michigan and working in behavioral health here for the last 30 years, and that truly is an honor. I'd like to thank Christine and the team at Henry Ford Maple Grove today for hosting us. What a beautiful facility. And for those of you who did not take a look up at the icicles on the windows, please do it before you leave. It is truly Mother Nature at her best. So NACOA provides treatment program education around the country for programs that do not do anything as a treatment center for children. So we help you to deal with the kids. If you have an adult program, we'll help you to create a program, we'll do intensives with you, we'll do education for you. And we also help schools and every other professional you can think about, clergy, law enforcement, teachers, everybody understand the disease of addiction and the impact on those children. And I'll talk a little bit more about that invisible population later in this session today. Thank you.
And again, I'm Christine from Henry Ford Maple Grove. For those of you who aren't familiar with Maple Grove, we are a subacute residential treatment facility. We do detox and residential level of care in-house. We have full services in our outpatient, IOP, ERG, individual sessions. We have a full medical clinic that provides medicated assisted treatment services as well to the community and our patients. And more to come in 2026. As those of you know, we've expanded our mental health and addiction footprint with our joint venture with Ascension. So we have been very excited, and those of you who know Chris Nixon's been doing beautiful work. He's in the back there to welcome Brighton Center for Recovery to the Henry Ford family, Eastwood Residential, and then Eastwood outpatient clinics that are now part of Henry Ford. So more to come in 2026 for expanded services and collaborations in that area. So thank you.
And I'll just say thank you for hosting, because every time I walk into this building, it is a walk through memory lane for me. I came here and have great things to say about Maple Grove. It was April of 1992. And every time coming back here is pretty awesome. So thank you guys for doing that. So we're going to officially get started with our program. And part of what we're really committed to, as Christine talked about, as Michigan Presents, is bringing providers together and bringing people who help people, whatever, there's therapists in here, I think there's people from schools here, there are some law firms here, there are people from the auto companies, and a wide range. And what we want to really be able to do is highlight the different providers that can help people. So part of this is educational about having providers, and part of it is obviously educational because we have some amazing speakers today. So to start off with, I want to introduce Momentum. Momentum is a program in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it is a program that Feinberg has used and collaborated with quite a bit over the years. The program does amazing work, and they're amazing people. So what I'd like to do is introduce a good friend of mine and a great guy, Jared Murray, to introduce our first speaker.
Hey everybody, my name is Jared Murray. I'm from Alabama, so Alabama. traveled a far way up here to hang out with Steve in the snow and ice. There's not a lot of people I'd come this far for to hang out in like 13-degree weather than Steve Feldman. I'm a big runner, and I was looking on my phone before I came, and I was like, not gonna be running outside. But anyways, really grateful to be here, grateful to be asked to introduce the keynote speaker for the conference today, and wanted to be able to tell you guys a little bit about our program, Momentum Recovery. So we are based in Wilmington, North Carolina. I've worked in this field for 10 years, been at Momentum for a little over 5 years. And one thing I'm extremely grateful for in terms of the work that we do is just like our focus on relationships. I think that all of us that have worked in behavioral health with substance use and mental health know that like connection and relationships is really the center of, I don't know, getting better and finding fulfillment. A big part of what we do is we have long-term treatment programs both for young adult men and young adult women. We primarily work with 18 to 35-year-olds, kind of that college-interrupted population, so to speak. So a lot of our young adults that we work with are still dependent on mom and dad, still need a heavy amount of life skills and direction in their life and such. And outside of those things, what I really love that we do is really kind of helping these young adults find, like I said, community and relationships. And I know for me, getting sober at 20 years old, if I never found things to be passionate about and hobbies and things to connect to in that way, I would have never engaged in treatment, I would have never engaged in recovery. So at Momentum, we have our primary mental health and our primary substance use license. So we work with dual diagnosis clients, and a heavy emphasis on trauma work, a heavy emphasis on everything that we do clinically, having an attachment lens to it, trying to help our young adults really find secure attachment. And so a big component of what we do is a lot of adventure-based and experiential therapy. When we see young adults, get out on a surfboard and learn how to surf and have an experience together like that, seems to really connect to them in a really meaningful way. So a lot of the adventure-based things that we do are things like surfing, paddleboarding, kayaking, fishing, a lot of recreational-based therapy as well, like pickleball, taking the guys to play golf. We do a lot of rec-based activities. I'm the director of admissions, and so I always tell these guys we do these things, and then they always tell me that I lied to them. And so we actually took them out on the boat offshore last week, and I got to see them this week, and I was like, see, I told you we go fishing here. They're excited about that. But anyways, I don't want to spend too much, talking about our program. We are in Wilmington, we are on the coast, we do really intensive clinical work. Clinical excellence is really what we're founded on. Both with psychodrama, experiential therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, med management, all that great stuff, mixed in with a heavy adventure-based, component as well. But to kind of get into introducing our speaker, I met Chantel last night, and she kind of like figured me out in like 2 minutes, literally. Like it took my therapist like a couple months to kind of figure me out. She was like on it, All of a sudden the dinner turned into like an intervention on my codependency and my work, being a work alcoholic. And so it just happened very fast. But I was really, really impressed though with meeting her, and we had some great conversations about, approaching substance use and mental health with an attachment lens, with a trauma focus. I think those things are important. I know she's going to talk a lot more about trauma, and really excited about her presentation. She's a clinical psychologist. She has been in this industry, she told me, 500 years. So really blessed to hear you speak. Come on.
I just wanted to ask real quick, I can turn off some of these lights if
Yeah.
there's a problem.
You can't
I just
see.
didn't know, yeah, okay, so.
That'd be good. Can someone tell me what time I speak? When do I stop?
You stop at 10:30.
10:30, okay, because I want to be mindful of the time always, yeah. Okay.
Or a few minutes back.
A few, okay. It's so nice to be with you all. Yeah, what a pleasure. Oh yeah, here's my clicker. I'm still oriented. I'm hoping that we will make a little bit of progress today together, essentially talking about a topic that a lot of folks, I think, believe is a little bit more complex. And dissociation is inherent to trauma-related disorders, but I think when people hear the term dissociation, they think extreme states of trauma. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret today, that you'll probably all dissociate at some point in time in this presentation. So what dissociation is, at its most basic level, is your mind takes you somewhere else. And that can be done for more extreme states, it can be done for less extreme states, but we're going to talk a little bit about how that might intersect in the process of reaching people, if our goal is to reach people in treatment. I'm having a hard time with both of these. I feel like I'm holding ice cream cones. Okay. So this is just a lot of things to say. Essentially, I'm going to try and talk about the clients that are harder, that are apparently seem a little bit harder to reach. And with a little bit more focus today on clinicians and what's happening inside a clinician's process when you intersect with a client like that. Maybe provide a different framework for understanding what might be happening. A little bit of a paradigm shift for those who are used to conceptualizing clients who are hard to reach as resistant or defensive. I think those terms are used a lot in our industry for good reasons. But the reason I named the talk From Walls to Bridges is, you know, a lot of times we experience clients hit their own wall in treatment, or sitting across from them we feel like we're literally like in front of a wall. Or maybe there's a wall between us. So just some different ways of thinking about that, conceptualizing that, and then just touching a little bit lightly on treatment modalities that I think help with that. And none of this will be a surprise to all of you, but the comorbidities of substance use and trauma-related conditions are incredibly high. I mean, if you're treating substance use, you are treating trauma. I mean, we know this. Some estimates are as high as 80% of the people that present for substance use disorder have some sort of trauma-related condition, even if they're not meeting full criteria of PTSD. And that's, if you think about it, even without the history of other complexities, it's talk about small t traumas and relational traumas. I mean, the way that I think about trauma is it's a disruption in the relationship that you have to self, right? So it's difficulty feeling safe with self. It's feeling eclipsed, fragmented, compartmentalized inside self. In many ways, clients who are cut off from the full range of emotions, it's easy to think about that as potentially trauma-related condition because we learn a lot about how we allow in certain feelings by what's modeled for us. And I don't know about you, but I was raised by pretty great parents on paper. And most of the clients that will come to us will say, oh, my parents were great. People liked hanging out at our house. People liked hanging out at my house too. But that's not because it felt like an emotionally safe place for me, but that was really confusing because my dad was super engaging and super narcissistic at the same time. And there were all sorts of implications for that for me in terms of how I developed my relationship with myself. The other thing that's so interesting about trauma-related conditions and substance use disorders is they're kind of forged and amplified by the concept of hiding. Does that make sense? Within a trauma-related condition, most people stay safe by hiding, disappearing to themselves. I mean, that's another way to think about dissociation is you kind of disappear from yourself. You disappear from your feelings. And when people have very severe substance use disorders, they're incredibly skilled at hiding, right? More pathological way to talk about that is lying, manipulating, right? All those other things. But that's just really effective hiding if you think about it. Disappearing, being not noticed when they don't want to be noticed, right? I mean, how many times you treat someone and many people around them are oblivious to what's happening. You know, there's something really scary about going undetected, and it's also how people's conditions worsen. And even when they're in treatment, they're still hiding. many clients, you have the sense like, I don't really know this client. I don't know if I have access to them. And what's really scary is they don't have access to themselves either, a lot of the time. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that conceptualization. And this, sorry, I didn't do a good color job on this because this is hard to read, so I'll read a little bit for you. But folks are undoubtedly familiar with the concept of small t trauma. And that, again, it's the idea that we're not talking about big T trauma, which is like obviously life-threatening or be something that you would see in a movie or hear someone talk about and you would kind of go, oh my gosh, that's terrible, right? But small T trauma is a much more pervasive chipping away at your sense of safety. That's another term I want to talk about today. I want to underscore for people that the idea of emotional safety and physical safety is really complex, actually. I think we tend to think about safety on a binary spectrum. So you're either safe or you're unsafe, or I don't know how many times you said to a client, maybe in an attempt to make them feel more comfortable, you're safe here, I'm gonna try and be a safe person for you. And that's so tricky, right? Because you know, you can be safe in some ways for someone and totally unsafe at the same time. We know that's true, right? This room is not physically unsafe for you, but if I asked you to come up here and share about the thing that makes you feel most vulnerable, this room might feel unsafe, appropriately so, really quickly, right? So there's degrees of safety that we experience, and that's true, of course, for clients. Another way I think about small t trauma is, in many ways, what that means, oftentimes it's related to primary caregivers or your family of origin. Of course, like we know that what happens under the age of 18 is really important. I'm sure all of you know that, particularly those of you who work with younger kids and young adults, right? One way to think about it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, is this idea that one of the things that people get robbed of in their development of a relationship to self, an integrated sense of who they are, is they become much more trained to track what's happening around them than what's happening inside of them. And if you come from a family that has a lot of conflict or divorce, where things weren't emotionally safe, neglect can be another way your feelings weren't seen. And in many ways, kids that are really good at appearing as though they don't need help quickly are very high targets for this kind of trauma. So precocious kids or kids who learn, it's kind of amazing. I mean, kids will parentify really fast, right? And those kids go undetected as having trauma-related issues in a lot of ways until they have other behavioral issues that kind of tell them out. But so early parentification, also really intrusive, poor parents. I mean, this is the other preamble that I'm going to talk a lot about all these things that we do with our kids. But trust me, I feel like I'm fucking up my kids every day. Like every day. And I finally said to myself, I just want to fuck them up differently. That's my goal. So if you feel yourself going, oh my God, yeah, it's really like, it's really about breaking the cycle and creating a new version of damage. That's evolution. So, it's hard, right? I mean, people are dealing with their own suffering. I mean, a parent is dealing with their own trauma. My mom was so traumatized. I actually think narcissism is also a trauma-related condition in many ways. So, you know, when parents are not available to themselves, they cannot be available to their children. They just can't. That's just a capacity issue, right? And so it's not about blaming anyone. It's just recognizing there's implications for that, you know? And then we talk about folks who come from marginalized populations or non-dominant populations, navigating outside of their family systems, navigating constantly wondering about whether or not an environment feels safe for them. Microaggressions and racism, and so folks with different gender identities where it's non-dominant in the population. I mean, then you add on top of that and on top of that and on top of that, and then you can understand why people are walking around with a lot of armor. A lot of protection, right? Makes a lot of sense why people have to protect themselves. And the best protection is undetectable. So that's the other thing I just want to underscore today is because you can't see their protection, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That just means it's really good protection. All right, so go to the next here. I'm hinting at this, but in particular, when the person that was most unsafe for you was also the person that was supposed to be safe harbor, we've got a big problem. That's called complex trauma. Judith Herman wrote an incredible book about this, Trauma and Recovery. And it's essentially, complex trauma is a violation of human connection. So your primary people that you were supposed to look to when there was trouble, you know, in the young attachment exercises that they do with kids, right? Who, you have a kid who goes into a room and parents in the room and kid will wander away from the parent if something bad happens and they fall, they look back at the parent. Well, when they look back at the parent and the parent's dissociating, what happens to that kid? Right? They're checking in with safety. What's getting mirrored back is dissociation. Or in my case, when I was a kid, it was depression. My mom was horribly depressed all throughout my childhood. She did a great job in a lot of ways. I credit her for amazing things, but she suffered from very severe mental illness. And so I learned really early on how to track what was going on with her mood as a way to keep myself safe. No big surprise I became a clinical psychologist, right? Yeah, I had super skills of therapy and tracking and connecting very early on. But, you know, complex trauma can come from overt abuse, but it can also just come from neglect. And I think that's probably a big part of what happened for me. And my circumstance is really hard to figure out and didn't really show up for me until I went into attachment relationships and they were a mess. And I was like, why am I so bad at relationships? I don't understand this. But what happens is, when you have complex trauma, when you enter into connection, really available connection actually feels scary. Because it's unfamiliar, it's unpredictable, and when you've been in previous relationships with people in power, it's been weaponized against you. So you may not really recognize what's happening until you get into, you're like, I'm a very capable person, I do great everywhere else, and then it's not until they enter into relationships, so you'll start to see some of that. Now that's not the case for everybody, that's just like one variation on the theme. But again, I say all of this to underscore the idea that there are insidious ways that this shows up for people, right? And no big surprise, if there's a violation of human connection, and your earliest memories are of parents who weren't actually available, and when they were available or they did track you, they also used, you know, again, I think this is just them trying to survive in their own right, but they were unsafe because they could weaponize your vulnerability. Then imagine a therapist stepping into that same attachment network, who's in power, who's in control, and asking you to tell them everything about yourself. For so many clients, there is tremendous fear about how you're going to use that. Right? And you can say, don't worry, you can trust me. But in their nervous system, this feels like terror on some level to give that information to you because they haven't had experiences with people in positions of power that haven't inadvertently exploited it. Addiction is a disease of isolation. I'm sure you all have heard that before, right? It's so sad because, I mean, people are feeling so alone inside, and so they use, and then it temporarily allows them to feel more connected to other people. At the same time, it disconnects them from themselves. And even in those moments of connection, while they're using, some part of them always knows this isn't real connection, right? On the individual, sometimes now that environment wasn't physically unsafe for me, but imagine for kids where it's physically unsafe, and I had the privilege of not worrying about where food was coming from, right? I had resources. But imagine if you couple an environment that feels totally out of control with a child that's very aware that they're not in control of the environment, then dissociation starts to make a ton of sense, right? I don't want to feel, this feels too much, too hard for too long, so I'm just going to not feel it anymore. I'm going to disconnect, right? I'm going to go away. I'm going to find a way to survive this, right? I mean, I think in many ways, I mean, what are our best little tools of dissociation, right? We all have them. These masterful dissociation aids, right? You never have to experience yourself at all if you have one of these, right? Depending on what you're watching, of course, right? Or listening to or scrolling through. So yeah, so traumatic, I want to kind of underscore that I think dissociation gets a bad rap. It's a very skillful, adaptive place to be. What makes it so scary for people is when you've done it for so long to survive, you no longer have a choice about when you do it. And I think that's what can be really scary for clients, is they get so good at dissociating and disconnecting from themselves that when you ask them about what they're feeling, especially in early recovery, right, well, a lot of clients are like, what are you talking about? I can't feel anything. What do you even mean? You get two subtypes, right? You get clients who are flooded completely, and then ones who can't feel anything, right? And so how do we think about that? How do we conceptualize that? How do we work with each one of those things differently? So a lot of clients don't experience their body at all. When you ask them about what they're noticing in their body or sensations in their body, it feels like you're asking them an impossible question. And for other clients, the way that they've learned to survive is to become pretty hyper-intellectual, right? Like super cerebral, cognitively debate you until the cows come home, and very good at it, better than you. Good news is you don't have to win that debate. You know, that's a place we get stuck sometimes though, right? Like, oh shit, what if this client is smarter than me? We've all been there, oh no. I remember a while back going, oh thank God I don't have to be smarter than my clients. I just need to know how to talk about feelings. Yeah. So how do we not spend our time there? Because that feels much safer for them, right? But it's not gonna really help them in the way that we wanna ultimately help them, right? But it definitely presents a significant barrier to the process of self-exploration. And most of what we're doing is asking clients to explore what's happening inside. But if they can't feel anything, that can be really hard. And then it induces a sense of failure, like I should know the answer to this and I don't know the answer to that. And then when they feel like failures, then guess what feeling gets amplified? Shame. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me that I don't know the answer to these questions. How many clients, when you spend enough time getting deep enough in their system, they'll tell you, I'm pretty sure I'm broken. I'm unfixable. And I don't even think you can help me. Which is why it's hard for me to even try. Right? Better to not try and someone doesn't reach you than to try really hard and get rejected. That's what we call a traumatic recapitulation, right? Katzian's a really important contributor to the work of substance use. I don't know if you're familiar with, but he spoke a lot about the self-medication hypothesis. He's got some really interesting ideas about why people are drawn to different substances based on kind of their core wounds. Or I remember reading an article and actually then hearing this later in treatment. One of the young folks that we treated with opiate use disorder, after the Manor first opened, he said, the first time I used heroin, it was a feeling of absolute love. I felt like I had absolute love, like everything was going to be okay, right? So it's a little less conceptualization of substance use as just a pleasurable vacation from self, disappearing. Most of the clients that I've worked with, he's got this great quote, substances are not pleasure producing, but rather create and foster comfort and contact for individuals who are discomforted and disconnected. Substances relieve and change states of anhedonia, dysphoria, and unbearable, painful emotional states. So an interesting way to get at that with clients is, Tell me what you loved about using. What kind of relief did you get when you use that you don't get anywhere else? Just a little bit to depathologize the use and more curiosity about why it was needed, right? That's powerful, because anything we can do to reduce shame is going to increase the likelihood of access. This is a great question. I love asking clients. I've come to it more and more over time. It's a great question when someone is entering treatment. Does anyone understand what you're really going through? You have to really want to know the answer to get a good answer, though. You can't say to yourself, I already know the answer. You have to really want to know the answer. And it is a powerful moment just to sit with someone when they say, no. No one, right? That tells you a lot. So there's no safe relational contact for this person. There's no sense that anyone will ever be able to get it or understand it. Yeah? So therapists, beware. You've got your work cut out for you. You know, I used to be like, oh, thank God, I'm so glad I'm here. And then I realized, oh shit, this is going to be hard, right? Because the relational pathways don't exist in a safe way for this person. So I need to buckle up totally differently for that kind of work. Oh, that's sweet. Oh my God, how cute. It's just by itself. It's a very pleasant ring. I couldn't tell by the soundtrack all of a sudden, but I do have fantasies about a soundtrack of my life, but that one was almost creepy. Okay, so I think I already kind of built some of this in, but attachment, right? The work of therapy is attachment, whether you say you're an attachment therapist or not, right? You're building a relationship with someone. And so you're the primary nexus for the delivery of treatment. It's coming through you as a relational being. And so no matter what kind of work, even if you're primarily focused on CBT or maybe trauma-focused CBT or behavioral interventions, it's really important that we get a sense of what it's like for this person to be connected. And what does it feel like to be in the room with you? Because, you know, unfortunately, so many of our clients don't have attachment patterns that feel safe and reliable and accessible, right? And we want to get good information from clients. We don't want to get the rote answers. They're so good at using statements or phrases. How many times have you sat with a client and been like, oh, they have told this story 1,000,000 times. And you know, it's always remarkable when you feel that in the room. There's no emotion behind it, right? So all these little ways, and what's so powerful about the unavailability that happens for young kids, and this also ties into the relationship with self piece, is the way that a kid learns to know themselves is by what gets mirrored back to them. That's how a kid knows what a feeling is. Like if they get upset about something, they don't have language for it. A parent or a caregiver comes and drops down on their level ideally and goes, well, like, you seem really mad. You seem really angry. And that's how a kid goes, oh yeah, that's anger, right? Is mirroring back, having finding language for things, attuning to what's happening. Sometimes a parent might even produce language for what they think is happening for a child, right? But if that doesn't happen, then we start to understand more about when we treat these individuals in our treatment centers, and there's this great, I wish I had a slide in here, I don't think I left it in, but Lindsay Brahman, B-R-A-M-A-N, just write down her name so you can look at her website, Lindsay, L-I-N-D-S-A-Y, Brahman. She's got these great emotion wheels that you can turn into pillows for your therapy rooms. And on that wheel it has all the emotions, but what I love about her pillows, they also have somatic sensations outside the emotional sensations. So I love to ask clients when I'm first working with them, tell me which feelings are allowed inside. Not just like what you experience regularly, but which feelings are allowed inside. And I mean, if you look at the level of emotional access, it'll tell you everything you need to know about how disconnected this person is from themselves, right? I mean, our emotions are a birthright. There are primary communication pathways that help us understand what our unmet needs are. So if you're sitting with a client who says, I cannot ever feel sad, no matter what else you're trying to work with them on, if you can't get them connected to sadness safely, all of those interventions are essentially going to be fighting against a deeper layer of dissociation. So we have to pay attention to what people have access to inside themselves. And we can't force the process, but to have the dialogue open is incredibly important. If every time someone feels anger, they also immediately feel shame, that's good information, because they're going to have a really hard time protecting themselves and setting boundaries, right? So just to be really deeply curious about what it means, because when people don't have access to that, and they're in environments where they felt helpless, powerless, or they didn't have the ability to affect change, they become, the heartbreak of trauma is alienation from self. And an internalized sense of badness, which is essentially another way to talk about shame. Something is deeply wrong with me. If you could see how messed up I really was, and then enter substance abuse, which gives them all the ammunition in the world to reinforce this idea that they're monsters, because the things they do when they're using feel terrible and deplorable and demoralizing, right? So it's a reification of the idea that something is so deeply damaged inside of them, there's not a chance that you would be able to help them. And so many clients live with this feeling inside of them, and they never say it out loud. Instead, what do? Externalizing behaviors that make them really hard to treat. They seem really stuck or resistant. They act out. They get volatile, difficult, combative, antagonistic, right? What do we say to ourselves when we can't reach people, when they're just, it's like a brick wall, or when they're just stuck? How might we conceptualize that differently? Now, when I was in treatment, when I first started in treatment, the most common thing, I remember, I worked in a treatment center in Malibu, and I was in the milieu all the time with the clients. I actually was volunteering at the time. And I remember it was very powerful for me to get that education. This was the same time that I was bartending, right? And I would see the clients come out of session with a therapist, where some therapists had tried to be like pretty heavy-handed about surrendering. And, but they were using kind of force, yeah? You have to do, you haven't surrendered. You're gonna die. Sorry, that's not funny, but I'm remembering that I'm sitting outside, and we're still
disclosure, and I would like to know what your position is in self-disclosure in the therapeutic environment, because I fully believe in like Terry Reel's relational philosophy that that's how you create safety is by sharing some of your deep understanding, lived experience of the client's trauma.
Yeah, so the question was about self-disclosure, like, do you use it, when do you use it, can be therapeutically useful. She was mentioning Terry Reel's model. I do think it can be very useful, and I think you have to watch really carefully while you're doing it. That's probably the hardest edge of it, is what I often see sometimes with clinicians is it's almost like it becomes like a bypass for real rapport building, because they jump to assume that because I have an experience that's similar to your experience, I know you, I understand you. And so I think it's really important to be judicious about it. And I think anytime you self-disclose, the next question should be, what is it like for you hearing that? Because I don't think we ask that question enough. I'm just curious, now that I've shared that, what do you notice about it? And how is it for you that I chose to share that? I think clients find it incredibly helpful at times, but I think, so many wonderful parts of the 12-step program, just from that peer-based model, involve a lot of self-disclosure. And I think so many clients are afraid that when they hear you telling about yourself, that it assumes you know something about them. So that's the edge I'm always trying to watch. How's that land for you?
Very helpful.
Yeah, okay, great. It's a great question, yeah. Yes,
For clients who typically like to stay on the surface,
yeah.
do you just assume that they're not ready to dig deep? Or do you just wait until they kind of bring it up, or do you bring it up?
Can I ask what you do?
I'm okay.
Say it again?
I'm
You're not a therapist? Oh, okay, maybe you should go to therapy school, because that's a great question.
No, I'm sorry. I'm like, what, anyways. Typically, I will ask, like, we kind of start in the beginning of like,
Yeah,
how are you doing?
yes.
But if something they bring up connects, then I might ask a deeper question.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of times they're kind of thrown off by it.
Yeah. They're thrown off by your question, the deeper question?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, one of the superpowers of therapeutic process that I was taught early on was when I'm wondering about something, I should just ask it out loud. And I think because we get trained to hold the wall, the therapeutic container wall so strongly, again, I think it's because it's like, it also is like a proxy for competence or whatever the case is. And when I'm struggling to figure something out, I always find a way to just ask the question. So like with a client who stays really surface level, I would just, I'd be inclined to say, like I notice when you're coming in, we talk about a lot of things and a lot of them don't really have to do with you a lot of the time. And I really want to respect that might be a safer way for you to be in therapy with me. But I guess I'm also just worried or scared that I might be missing something really big about what's happening for you if we keep it at that level. That's like one way,
Yeah.
but just to kind of name it. Now you might get a client be like, well, that's bullshit. Like, this is still about me, but you might say, so if you have someone who might be really reactive, you might just say like, I wonder what happens for you in here with you when you talk with me. And can you help me understand a little bit more about what you think the reason for therapy is? And I'm wondering, do you ever come in here with a need that's unmet that I might be able to better support you in? And I'm wondering if we can talk about that. Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Yes,
I work in residential care.
Right.
And pretty extended program.
uh-huh,
I'm curious, when working with a client that has both addiction and severe trauma issues,
Yeah.
who happens to have two very, well-entrenched personality disorders, and I don't want to pathologize that.
No, I mean,
pathologize
it's
in any way,
good to
just
talk about it, yeah.
We know the long-term nature of treatment for personality disorders. How as a clinician and a healing professional,
Yeah.
do I protect myself without putting up a wall? Because very often the closer I get, the barbs come out.
yeah,
Not only to me, but to others around me.
yeah.
And it can feel wearing.
Oh, totally, yeah. Well, before I respond, I'm curious, like as you were sitting here today, did anything come to mind for you?
So much.
Oh, yeah,
This was a
okay.
wonderful presentation.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this was a God thing to put me here today.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me chills. God, I'm starting to feel so differently about personality disorders over time. I just am. And I think, it'll make me a little bit emotional. I just think really hard to reach people can feel that that's how they're being approached in many ways. Like, I can't tell you how many clients have said to me, well, I met with this clinician, a physician who came through our program, had tremendous trauma, and we referred him to another program. And he called me 3 weeks later and he said, I met with the head of the program who told me I was a narcissist and said, there's not a lot of treatment for narcissism. And I was so fucking furious. Like, we just have to do better. It's just like,
I mean, I've had colleagues say
yeah.
that you let them cut them loose, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
that.
I think even when you feel like you're being ineffective, and even in this, like what you just shared to me, I am so desperate to reach you, but I've noticed as we get closer, it feels scarier for me. And I'm not actually sure how to position myself in our relationship. And I remain really invested in supporting you,
All very true.
right? Just like speak the truth.
Thank you, that helps.
Yeah, but thank you for asking the question. Yeah.
I'm wondering how you navigate treating patients in higher levels of care when our systems, our insurance systems are so
Yeah.
set up to kind of reinforce
I
a
know.
lot of these abandonment
Yes.
wounds and
That's right.
continuously being diligent about providing support, keeping someone safe and recognizing that we're set up to kind of have challenges in this area. Oh, thank you.
Oh my gosh, this is a microphone. I'm gonna get up on the stage, shoot. No, thank you. I was just asking how we kind of navigate providing trauma-informed care in healthcare, where our insurance systems are set up to really kind of reinforce a lot of these abandonment wounds. There's difficulty with maintaining, you know, this longevity in the relationship and attachment, and also wanting to keep people safe and be realistic.
Yes.
That's where I think I find the most challenge, and then also how to navigate that with new clinicians as well. So curious your thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great question.
I mean, I don't know how helpful this will be, but I've started apologizing to clients about the limitations of our systems. Because I think to act as though this is good enough is not okay. And I think so many clients' sense of shame is internalized more deeply when an insurance company decides that they're better and they know they're not. And so, I don't know, I think there's something very powerful in starting to talk more openly about the limitations of the way healthcare is currently delivered and doing some paradigm dismantling around that. So that, I mean, if the thing that you say to a client is like, I am so sorry that people miss this about you. I mean, that is a powerful intervention without doing anything else. And it's heartbreaking, but we have to do better, and we can't do better all the time. And so, like, at least can we be in transparency about whose fault it is? You know? I think we're at time, yeah?
If you want to do one more.
One more? Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm over at Liberty House. I'm the program director over there, and I also do clinical care. I love the lecture, by the way, and I love the humble approach that you took to present the material. It was very effective. Not to pat you on the shoulder.
Thank you.
I do have
receive it.
a little bit of a complicated question. More so we work a lot with professionals, and when you have somebody who's high achieving and with past experience and things like that, they might have almost like a grandiosity when it comes to being able to conquer anything in life. Sometimes that will present as a desire to heavily rely solely on willpower to keep somebody sober in early recovery. Other than providing psychoeducation of why willpower is not typically an effective approach in early recovery to maintain sobriety, what kind of strategies have you gotten, or have you used in the past to maybe help with this phenomena? And I do really like the idea of using the protective systems lens, like this is a way of keeping people away.
Totally. Yeah.
But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? It is really good armor. The grandiosity piece is good armor, right? Especially when
you know, when the world has reinforced that behavior is very effective in a lot of other places, right? One curiosity that I have, and this is tricky if you don't have people for long enough sometimes, or you don't have a certain kind of, you know, we still use leverage at times because we have to, you know, about, it's really about relationships. Like, are relationships important to this person? And what my ultimate goal would be is to essentially have a conversation about how this persona often leaves them disconnected. So I don't even know that I'd tackle the willpower piece as much as saying, you know, you're here because something broke down in that system. And I know this feels very effective, but also like if your goal, and most clients, even the grandiose ones will say like, I want better relationships, I want to understand. The ones who say like, I don't want that, that's a lot harder. Then it's like, okay, when you're working with me, can you feel the connection that we have? And they look at you like, what are you talking about? Because it's like not even been on the table, the idea that they're going to be in connection with someone. So I try to kind of build in relationally, and then eventually I might say, would you be willing to hear from me what it's like to be with you in relationship? And that's where I'll say, I think you're really good at hiding your pain. And I think you're very capable in so many areas, and that really worries me because here you are in an environment where you might actually be able to get help. And it's invisible where you actually need it. To me. And that scares me for you. So it's kind of like coming around it sideways, but again, it's just like calling out what it feels like to be in a relationship. And if the model isn't set up to really support that dialogue, it's a lot harder if you don't have a lot of time with them, etc. And some of them will get enraged by that, but it's kind of effective for a lot of people. If you keep just talking about wanting to be a support and a help and understand the need, it dismantles a lot of the shame that they might feel with being called out sometimes. At least I've noticed that in some clients. Yeah, thank you. Thank you all very much.
Where you came from.
Oh, the manor?
Please.
Oh, sure, sorry, yes.
We are an 11-bed residential facility in central Wisconsin.
We do substance abuse and trauma reprocessing work, out-of-network insurance. It's a 6-week program. People stay longer, some people both stay shorter. We're very relational. What I'm speaking about is kind of our model, attachment driven. And we do trauma reprocessing, like for reals. So I'm really proud of that. And we really believe in family work and systems work. So please reach out to us if you have a question about that, or if you're curious about other programs that are similarly aligned that may not be a good fit for your loved ones. But yeah, so nice to be with all of you. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Chantel, that was fantastic. I'm sure we could have heard from you for another 3 hours, so thank you so much. I will not talk long because I'm between you and the break. For those of you who were not here this morning, my name is Denise Burtnap, and I am the CEO of NACOA, the National Association for Children and Families Impacted by the Disease of Addiction. We have been around since 1983. It's a perfect segue after Dr. Chantel, because what she talks about with the 80% of people being impacted by trauma that are now in addiction treatment, we deal with those children. And right now, 1 in 4 children live in a home where there is parental substance use disorder taking place. The University of Michigan revalidated that study this year, and that number has not changed since 1983. I'm going to repeat that. That number has not changed since 1983. I have worked in this field for almost 46 years. And back in the day, every treatment center offered something for children. I am sad to say that doesn't happen anymore because insurance and the systems that we talked about are broken. But I just want everybody to know NACOA has the skills, has the resources and information you need to help you in your treatment center, to help you in your professional practice. Much of that information is free. And I want to thank all of you for coming today, for the proceeds being able to support NACOA.
Because these are the children that Dr. Chantel talked about that are invisible. These 1 in 4 children, very, very few people ever talk about them, identify them, or know about them. And it's our job at NACOA to tell people about them. So people like me, and many of you I suspect in this room, who grew up with addiction in our households, we want to help those children so they don't end up in treatment centers as broken adults. It is much easier to help the kids, and that's what we do at NACOA. So whether you're a law enforcement individual, whether you work in the clergy or interfaith sector, whether you're working in treatment, we have resources to help you. We're there to do it, and we do whatever we can to offer it at a low cost to everybody. We also have curriculum that supports our organization that is evidence-based. It's whole family recovery curriculum. San Jose State University does all of our outcomes and measures. So if anybody is looking for a whole family recovery program to augment your IOP or your PHP, if you don't have a full family program, it's really easy to mobilize peer support specialists and peers and people with lived experience to do that. So I will stop now and say we're all going to be in the room. It's time for a break. And again, thank you to Dr. Chantel and Momentum. And we'll come back at about 10:45. Thank you.